Why hello there, and welcome back to Let's Make Us a Character. And the penultimate episode in my journey through the world that is Gamma, in which we will unfortunately make a character for Gamma World 6th edition. Now, you may recall from my last video that 5th edition was a campaign setting for Alternity with rules included. Well, 6th edition is a campaign setting for D20 Modern, with rules not included. And I already covered D20 Modern in a previous video, but if you haven't seen that one, watching it will not be necessary to understand this video. All you really need to know is that D20 Modern was Wizards of the Coast's hubristic attempt to one-up themselves in their quest for tabletop role-playing monopoly by releasing one game that was supposed to replace every other game on the market, which didn't work because that game wasn't very good, and also that idea was stupid. Anyway, Gamma World 6th edition also has the distinction of being the only edition of Gamma World not to be published by the rights holder. 1st through 4th edition were published by TSR, and 5th and 7th by Wizards of the Coast. But 6th edition was made and published by Art House and Sword and Sorcery, while being officially licensed by Wizards of the Coast. And you might be thinking, who the hell are Art House and Sword and Sorcery? Well, they are both White Wolf, publisher of Street Fighter the Storytelling Game, and other much less important titles. And obviously I do not know the terms of whatever licensing agreement they had, but fair warning, I am going to be making some assumptions about the terms of that licensing agreement. For example, how they weren't allowed to say for D20 Modern on the cover, only D20 Role-Playing, or D20 System, and then specifying on the back that it requires D20 Modern or D&D 3.5. But more on that later. Because this is not an open game licensed product, it's not even a D20 system trademark licensed product. It is an officially licensed product by Wizards of the Coast, which means that they had access to things outside of those licenses, but also that the Wizards were in a position to make additional demands for the use of the Gamma World IP. Anyway, authorship covered, Gamma World 6th edition was released in 2003 in the totally not exploitative 3-core book format, as was the style at the time, and supported by 3 additional books and at least 1 free adventure, making it the edition with the second most books, or tied for first with 4th edition, depending on whether or not you want to count Gamma Knights. So with all that weirdness out of the way, for now at least, let's make us a Gamma World 6th edition character for D20 Modern. Character creation is a simple 10-step process. So step 1, concept. And as always, if I just told you the character we are going to make, it would make the video much less interesting, although possibly a bit easier and shorter. But anyway, let's just move on to Step 2, generate ability scores, which is accomplished using whichever method the GM settles on for this campaign. Yeah, remember when I said I was going to be making some assumptions about the terms of the licensing agreement? Well, rules for generating ability scores are not included. There isn't even a suggested method, presumably so that we need to get those rules from the D20 Modern core book. And, I don't know, let's just go with the old 4d6 and discard lowest results, and then assign those attributes however we wish, which I've already done for convenience. So, on to Step 3, choose a genotype. We have 4 options this time: stock human, pure strain human, mutant, and synthetic. And boy, do I have things to say about every one of these. So I think the most obvious question here is, why do we have pure strain humans and stock humans? And there are 2 very strong possibilities. One, they just missed the point. In the previous 5 editions, pure strain humans are not vault dwellers. They are not the descendants of humans who avoided the radiation, biogenic agents, and whatever other nonsense the post-apocalyptic world threw at them. They were the descendants of humans who survived exposure to those things largely unchanged. They are not ancient humans in the Gamma Age. They are one of 2 divergent paths of humanity, the one that was naturally selected for resistance to those external forces, because the humans who weren't either died or became mutants. That's kinda how evolution works. Intentional or not, pure strain humans in previous editions weren't humans unchanged since ancient times. They were the product of natural selection adapting them to a new environment. They are basically just a different kind of less wacky human mutant, and looking at it that way really knocks them down off their pedestal, their genetic purity becoming a belief of zealots rather than a fact of the setting. But adding a third type of human to be the common people of the Gamma world seems to really not understand the place that pure strain humans had in the setting. However, there is of course another just as valid possibility. If we look at the stock human racial traits, you may notice that they don't have any. They are just the base D20 Modern characters, because the base D20 Modern game assumes that all characters are humans, which makes me wonder if their inclusion was required as part of the license rather than a choice. Like, one thing I've praised Gamma World for repeatedly is pure strain humans not just being a default, but rather their own thing with unique qualities and drawbacks. But stock humans here seem like they are only in the game to be a default, to be the stock D20 Modern character. But also, given that stock humans are mechanically identical to 21st century humans, wouldn't that make them the actual pure strain humans, and then the pure strain humans some kind of weird lab-bred race of supermen? I don't know, but let's look at our other options. Once again, we have mutants, and for whatever reason, I guess they decided that they would be the sexy ones. And mutants are further divided into 4 subtypes. Engineered animals, which are genetically engineered humanoid animals made as hyper-specialized workers and soldiers, though some breeds were made for entertainment, pleasure, and experimentation. Making this the second post-apocalyptic role-playing game I've covered to suggest that humanoid animals were specifically engineered for fucking. So this edition does have mutant animals, you just need to use the Moreau rules from D20 Modern, which also only provides 6 options. So, not great. Then there are engineered humans, new men, and true mutants, which are mechanically identical other than engineered humans, as well as animals, being immune to spontaneous mutations from leveling up or being knocked to 0 hit points. Which kinda makes it feel like they were going to have distinct mutant subtypes, but then just kinda forgot to actually do it. And finally, we have synthetics, which are robots, and actually do use the D&D construct rules, so they are immune to poison, disease, etc., and also get 5 points of kinetic damage resistance, and the ability to upgrade their robotic bodies, but also have to pay to heal and have limits on their skills and feats and hardwire allegiances. So basically, they have unique disadvantages to balance out their very strong advantages, the very thing I complained about robots not having in 5th edition. And because I'm sure you're wondering, yes, it is also specifically stated that some synthetics were created for the purpose of fucking. Because White Wolf was weirdly horny, just not really in a fun way. And looking at all of our options, I think this time we should go with Pure Strain Human. And you might be thinking, oh, well, if you're just doing that because you hate D20 Modern and want the easiest option. And yeah, well, shut up. But also, pure strain humans have been an option that I have ignored in 6 videos now, and will not be an option in the next one, so this is our last chance to make one. And as a pure strain human, we get +2 to Constitution and Intelligence, -2 to Strength and Charisma, a bonus to using Hard and Soul Tech equal to 2 plus half our character level, but also increase the DC of checks for using Biotech by 6 minus our Intelligence modifier. Not sure why we have 1 modifier to rolls and 1 modifier to DC, other than, maybe they thought people would be unable to comprehend the concept of a penalty equal to 6 minus your Intelligence bonus? Anyway, we also get a -2 penalty to reputation checks when dealing with non-pure strain humans, and gain 1 feat at first level instead of 2, so overall it does seem like something of a net minus. But, maybe that'll even out later. For now, let's just move on to Step 4. Choose a basic class. As this is D20 Modern, which is basically D&D without the fun, we have the same selection of wholly unremarkable starting classes. Strong Hero, Fast Hero, Tough Hero, Smart Hero, Dedicated Hero, and Charismatic Hero. None of which are exactly included in the book, a thing that I will explain further in a minute, but just looking at our stats, we do have some pretty high intelligence, so let's go with Smart Hero. And what is provided here is a description of each class and how they fit into this specific setting, a list of class skills and bonus feats, which thankfully they were allowed to include the entire list instead of just specifying which items were to be added or removed, as well as 1 new talent tree. Although since these talent trees never branch, they're more like talent stalks. And then for everything else, like progression tables, hit dice, etc., we need to go to the D20 Modern Core book. So let's head on over to the character sheet, and as a first level Smart Hero, we get the maximum value of 1d6 plus Constitution modifier, so 8 hit points, a base attack bonus of +0, Fortitude bonus of +0, +2 from our Constitution modifier for an overall Fortitude save of +2, Reflex bonus of +0, -1 from our Dexterity modifier for a Reflex save of -1, a Will save of +1, +1 from our Wisdom modifier for +2 overall, Defense bonus of +0, and Reputation bonus of +1. And just because I don't know where else to mention it, Speed of 30 feet, which is the base standard, and Initiative equal to our Dexterity modifier of -1. Then we get 1 talent from either this book or the D20 Modern Core, or I don't know, maybe any D20 Modern book. And let's just go ahead and take the Technophile talent from the new Savant talent tree in this book, which grants us the benefits of the Tech Familiarity pre-war feat without having to have that feat or its prerequisites, which grants a +4 bonus when analyzing hard tech. And speaking of feats, we get the Simple Weapons Proficiency feat, because all characters in D20 Modern get that feat, making it kind of unnecessary when they could have just made simple weapons not require proficiency. Then 1 additional feat of our choosing, and let's take Lightning Reflexes, which provides a +2 bonus to reflex saves. And finally, we get a list of class skills and skill points equal to 9 plus our Intelligence modifier times 4, so 48. Also, as mentioned, we have a slightly different class skill list as a Gamma World Smart Hero. So let's bring in the skills, and we can purchase ranks in skills at the cost of 1 point per rank in class skills up to a maximum equal to our character level +3, and 2 points per rank in non-class skills up to a maximum of half that of class skills. So putting 1 rank in read/write language, which notably in this setting is required for your character to be literate in their native language, costs 1 skill point, but putting 1 rank in concentration costs 2. However, let's put off spending the rest of our skill points until after Step 5. choose an occupation. We have 16 options, which are provided on page XX. Classic White Wolf. And let's just go ahead and go with Scavenger. Professions provide a wealth bonus, in this case +6, for now at least, as well as an additional skill list from which we can choose 3 skills to add as permanent class skills, or get +1 to if the skill is already a class skill, which means it can actually be advantageous to take a class at first level that doesn't have a skill you want so that you can get it as a permanent class skill from your occupation, instead of just getting a +1 bonus. Because remember, non-class skills have half the maximum ranks and twice the cost, and D20 Modern is a game that encourages multiclassing, even though they don't really make it any easier to do. So let's gain permanent access to Climb, Spot, and Survival, then spend our remaining 45 skill points, then add the relevant ability score modifiers to each skill to get the total skill modifiers, and move on to Step 6, add the character's 2nd and 3rd class levels. That's right, friends, characters start at 3rd level, and in a way that actually encourages deeper thought about your character's history. Basically, each level represents a different stage of the character's development. Level 1 being what I was, essentially the character's background. Level 2 being what I became, representing a turn in their life, what set them on their current path. And then level 3 being what I am, basically who the character is now at the beginning of play. So let's see, as a level 1 smart scavenger, let's say that our character was living in a fairly isolated, pure-strain human community, studying all of the ancient technology and text, and only venturing out as part of well-organized and defended scavenging expeditions looking for more ancient technology and information. But then let's say that all changed when we got separated from our group during an expedition and ended up having to survive on our own with little to no combat or survival experience, which we will represent by taking a level in Fast Hero, as we had to get by on our quick wits and quicker feet, gaining 1d8 plus 2 hit points. And while we are now a 2nd level character, we are still only a 1st level Fast Hero, so we gain the level 1 benefits of that class, +1 to reflex saves, +3 to defense bonus, and a level 1 talent. And let's just take the evasion talent from the defensive talent tree in the core book, which lets us not take half damage on save for half damage effects. We also get skill points equal to 5 plus our intelligence modifier, so also 8. However, because this is a different class, we have a different list of class skills, of course with a variant Gamma World one. So for the purposes of spending these points, our level 1 class skills are no longer class skills, only the Fast Hero class skills and the ones from our profession, hence why I made such a big deal about how valuable those permanent class skills are. So for example, Repair is no longer a class skill, but Ride now is, and Profession still is since it appears on both lists. And of course, Climb, Spot, and Survival will always be class skills regardless of what class level we're taking. So let's just spend those points and move on before we start questioning how to handle the fact that we currently have higher than maximum ranks in multiple skills. Then let's say that despite the horrors, that experience really opened our character's eyes to the world that exists outside of their confined life, and led her to want to strike out on her own and see what other kinds of undiscovered secrets awaited her in the wasteland. And for that, while the actions are adventurous, the motivations are more academic, so I'm going to say another level of Smart Hero. So 1d6 plus Constitution modifier is 7 hit points, and as a level 2 Smart Hero, we replace our level 1 Smart Hero bonuses with the level 2 Smart Hero bonuses, in addition to our level 1 Fast Hero bonuses. So our base attack bonus, will save, and defense bonus all go up by 1, and we get to select a bonus feat from those provided for our class, and let's just go with personal firearms proficiency, since we presumably learn to defend ourselves a bit before setting out into the wilds. However, we are also now a 3rd level character overall, so we get another feat just for being a 3rd level character. And let's go with Nanotech Attunement, which has some weirdly specific prerequisites, which we just happen to meet because this is a D20 system game and you do need to plan out your entire character progression before assigning a single attribute, or risk finding yourself with a severely underpowered character who can't really do or qualify for anything. And that feat gives us access to Nanomachines. Yes, they added a whole new type of thing to this edition, and I somehow was unable to stop myself from covering it. Then we get 9 plus intelligence modifier, so 12 skill points, and we are now back to our original set of class skills, so let's spend those, and move on to Step 7, Determine the character's vital statistics. All the things like name, gender, age, physical appearance, including height and weight, personality traits, allegiances, if any, and apparently, most importantly, action points. And to explain action points, I'm just going to turn it over to me in the D20 Modern video because I don't want to waste any more of my valuable life energy explaining it again. And what action points are is points that can be spent to activate certain class abilities or add 1d6 to a d20 roll, and this is a thing I like the idea of, but not so much how it was implemented. The issue is that once spent, action points are not regained. You get more of them every time you level up, but you never get any back. And I feel like having them as a finite resource is going to make the decision of spending them or not a more stressful experience than it really should be. Especially right after leveling up when you have the most points, but are also the furthest from getting more. And as a starting level 3 character, we get a number of action points equal to 4 plus the character's level rounded down, which according to the book is 6. And I'm just gonna go with that, but have fun trying to figure out what they actually meant there. So that's done, and even though that seems like an obvious last step, as I said, it is a 10-step process, so there are still 3 left. So on to Step 8, Apply FX. And basically, what FX are is D20 Modern's catch-all category for special abilities. Since D20 Modern is supposed to be the replace every other game with D&D system, and as such needs to cover every genre, no matter how poorly. So spells are FX, psionics are FX, cybernetics are FX, mutations are FX, and relevant to our character, nanotechnology is FX. So essentially, thanks to the nanotech attunement feat, our character is infected with nanomachines that we can use to produce various effects by spending nano units. And we start with a number of nano units equal to 20 plus 1/2 our level, rounded up, plus an area bonus, and for now let's just ignore that last one and say 22 total. And then you can store up to twice that many. And from there it just gets significantly more complicated, but that's for later. For now, let's just move on to Step 9, Add up the numbers, which I guess means it's time to double check our math and apply adjustments to ability scores. Unfortunately though, my maths are impeccable, and I added all the adjustments to ability scores when it was relevant to do so, as would anyone, making this step largely unnecessary, so Step 10, Outfit the character, where we get to the only salvageable part of D20 Modern, the wealth system. So we have a +6 wealth bonus from our occupation, +1 for having ranks in profession, and then the book says to add bonuses from class levels. But class levels do not provide wealth bonuses, so I'm just going to have to assume that they mean the wealth bonuses you get from leveling up. So basically, every time you level up, you make a profession check, so I guess I'm explaining skill checks now. When making a skill check, you roll a d20 and add the skill modifier, which, as mentioned earlier, is the total of ranks plus an ability modifier and any other miscellaneous modifiers. So, +4, or rather it was +4 when we reached level 2. It doesn't say to roll these at the profession bonus you had upon reaching that level, but it also doesn't really say to roll them at all, just to add some unspecified class level wealth bonuses, so I am just doing whatever comes the closest to making sense. And skill checks succeed on a total result greater than or equal to the difficulty class, or DC, which in this case is equal to our wealth bonus of 7. So 9 plus 4 is 13, which is in fact greater than 7. So we gain +1 to our wealth bonus for succeeding, and another +1 for every 5 points by which we exceed the DC, so +2 overall for a new wealth bonus of 9. Then on to level 3. The DC is now 9, as is our wealth bonus, but our profession skill bonus is also now +7. It is specified in the D20 Modern book that you do include ranks from the current level up. And 13 plus 7 is 20, another success. However, since we now have 6 ranks in profession, the bonus we get for a successful check increases to +2, and then another +2 for exceeding the DC by 10 for a wealth bonus of 13, to which we add 2d4 for a total starting wealth bonus of 18. So, what is a wealth bonus, and what does it do? Well, it is an abstract representation of our wealth, which works really well in, any game, but specifically well in a post-apocalyptic setting where all of a character's wealth is not likely to be held in a single convenient form of currency. And basically how it works is, instead of a price, items have a purchase DC, and we can just buy anything with a purchase DC equal to or under our wealth bonus. And if that DC is also 14 or lower, don't have to worry about it affecting our wealth bonus in any way, which covers all of our basic survival essentials, including a stylish leather jacket. But let's say that we want some pricier equipment, like a blaster pistol, smart jumpsuit, or hover cycle. The purchase DC of a blaster pistol is 18, which is equal to our wealth bonus. So, like all of the basic equipment, we can just buy it without having to make a check. But because the DC is also above 14, doing so will reduce our wealth bonus by 1 to 17. However, if we want to buy something with a purchase DC higher than our wealth bonus, we need to make a wealth check. And since our wealth bonus decreases after every successful check, and specifically reduces by an amount relative to the discrepancy between wealth bonus and purchase DC, it makes sense to start with the highest values, which in this case is the hover cycle with its purchase DC of 32. So we roll a d20 and add our current wealth bonus of 17, and fail because success was very unlikely here. But now let's try for the smart jumpsuit, which has a purchase DC of 20. And success, and since the purchase DC was 1 to 10 points higher than our wealth bonus is reduced by 1 point to 16. And then we purchase or roll for the rest of the equipment we want, reducing our wealth bonus overall to 10. But then, as alluded to earlier, the scavenger's profession wealth bonus only applies during character creation. And now that we are done shopping, we lose that +6 bonus, so down to a wealth bonus of 4. Which is kind of a clever way of handling the idea that a scavenger would reasonably have an amount of equipment exceeding their wealth level. And now our character is fully equipped for whatever the wasteland may throw at her. And when I say fully equipped, I mean overly equipped, because all of that equipment weighs in at 79.5 pounds, which is just under our 80-pound heavy load, because strength of 8. But fortunately, we can offload most of that onto our mount, which, I will be honest here, I could not find a purchase DC for a non-robotic mount anywhere in this book other Gamma World 6th edition books or D20 Modern books, other than D20 Apocalypse, but that book also uses a different wealth system and provides no rules for converting between the two, other than find something of equivalent value that's listed in both books. And based on the equivalent values, a donkey should have a purchase DC of 15, but a donkey is also boring, so let's just say some kind of post-apocalyptic donkey equivalent. And then the same goes for a lot of the other stuff that I didn't list purchase DCs for, but in those cases I just assumed I could afford them. So now to fill in all of the numbers, our defense is equal to 10 plus defense bonus of 4, minus 1 from our dexterity, plus 1 from our leather jacket, and no size adjustment for 14 overall. Then touch defense, which does not include armor, so 13, and flat-footed defense, which does not include dexterity bonus, but presumably does include dexterity penalty, since that's usually how it goes, so 14. And then our blaster pistol has a range of 40 feet, does 2d6 electrical damage, crits on a 19 to 20, and then things get murky. So our ranged attack bonus is equal to our base attack bonus of +1, dexterity modifier of -1, and maybe something else. As a pure strain human, we get a +3 bonus to using hardtech and soultech. And you might reasonably assume that things like hardtech and soultech would have definitions somewhere in the book. And I mean, soultech does, but if there is ever a definition of what qualifies as hardtech, I was unable to find it. The word hardtech only appears like 5 times in the entire book. Fortunately, one of those times is in the section on identifying items, which just happens to use a laser pistol as the only example. And since this is White Wolf, we can fairly safely assume that a laser pistol and blaster pistol are the same thing, so this is probably hardtech. But now that we have established that a blaster pistol is hardtech, we need to determine what using means, because there is no specification. It doesn't say that it applies to attack rolls, but it doesn't say that it doesn't either. And my player brain is saying that it should apply. As mentioned earlier, overall, pure strain humans feel a little underpowered, most notably losing a whole feat at character creation, and getting to add that bonus to attacks with specific rare weapons seems like more than a fair trade for the other penalties. However, my Game Master brain is seeing this as a huge, very exploitable hole in the system. Like, yeah, this character getting a +3 bonus to attacks with specific weapons isn't too bad, but this character isn't built for combat. If I had a mind to do that, I could be starting with a +9 attack bonus. And also, we need to consider that we are unfortunately dealing with D20 Modern here, and pure strain humans don't actually lose a feat any more than an elf does in D&D. They hard-coded the human bonuses into the rules, which then have to be excised for non-human characters. Also, skill checks, saves, and attack rolls are very specific things in the D20 system, and rarely does anything apply to all of those. But this is just an example, so whatever, let's just say that it applies to any use of hardtech and soultech, including attack rolls, including saves, so +3 attack bonus. And yeah, I could have just made all of these decisions quietly and presented the results, but I feel it is important to understand what kinds of issues the average group would have to deal with when trying to play these games with little to no guidance. And this character is done. Alright, so this is D20 system, and I am going to say it is very unlikely that you have found your way to a video on Gamma World 6th edition without knowing the basics of, like, any of the last 4 editions of D&D. Yeah, I am counting one D&D as a new edition, specifically because they do not want you to. So I am going to be very brief here. I already explained how skill checks work, but just in case you skipped ahead to this part, I will explain it again since I need to explain item identification anyway. Identifying an item is now a single skill check. Kinda, with specific outcomes for specific successes and critical errors. So, for example, figuring out how to fire a laser pistol requires a DC 15 Knowledge Technology Advanced check. So we roll a d20, add our +7 skill bonus, and +4 from the Technophile talent, versus the DC of 15, with success meaning that we figure out how to do that thing. And if we had rolled a 10 or lower, we would have shot ourselves or someone else. So only one check, but it's one check to do one thing. You need to make a separate check for every specific function of the item. So definitely the most tolerable artifact identification system so far, but that is a fairly low bar. Well, tolerable for the player at least. There is only one example provided, so for every item that the GM wants to put into the game that needs to be identified, they need to determine how many functions must be figured out, then set up a success and error DC with specific outcomes for each function of each item. Like, there are some guidelines for doing that, but still, it does seem like a major hassle for something that is such a core part of the game. And then all of the other mechanics are some variation upon that. So if we wanted to shoot a thing, we roll a d20, add our attack bonus of +3, and compare the result to the target's defense. If the winds blow a toxic cloud of radioactive mutagens our way, we roll a d20, add our fortitude bonus of +2, with an additional +5 for being a pure strain human, and then compare the result to a DC set by the strength of the mutagen. And in this case, if we had not succeeded, we would then roll a mutation type based on the mutation strength, and then a specific mutation from the honestly kind of pitiful selection when compared to previous editions. Basically, in this edition, the whole setting is just a bubbling cocktail of radiation, biogenics, and nanomachines, all of which can just be randomly stumbled into at any time. And speaking of nanomachines, as mentioned, nanomachines are just kind of everywhere, and we can just stumble into a particularly thick concentration of them and become infected. Kinda. You see, nanotech is impossible to simply buy or decide to pick up somewhere, which is weird because we have a feat that basically just gives us nanomachines. Or does it? Anyway, point is, just like you can randomly get exposed to radiation that will mutate you, you can also just randomly get infected with nanomachines. And I may have actually skipped a step earlier, so when nanomachines choose a host, yes, they must choose you. You need to make a nanotech contact roll, which is a d20 plus half character level rounded up, plus 2 times the absolute value of your constitution modifier, so +2 and -2 are both +2, so 6 overall, versus a DC of 20, and success, because I need it to be a success for the example. And notably, without the nanotech attunement feat, it's a DC of 30. Of course, the feat itself doesn't even mention anything about having to make this check. It just says, the character may assemble an initial pool of nano units and begin creating nano effects. Because, why have consistent rules when you can have 20 pages of fluff text? Also, earlier you may recall that I mentioned an area bonus. And basically, while the whole world is filthy with nanomachines, some areas are filthier than others. So, if we wanted to determine the nanotech level of the area, we would need to make a survival check. So a d20 +5 survival bonus, and another +5 if equipped with a nanodetector. An item that you might assume would be included in the equipment section if you were not familiar with this book or the company that produced it. But if that were a thing, it would have been a thing that I would have bought when I was buying equipment, and since it has no purchase DC, I will just have to assume that the DC is 0. So 28 total, and we have successfully identified this as an area of moderate nanite saturation. And if you are wondering why this is a survival check instead of like knowledge nanotech, it's because this game isn't very well designed. So in an area of moderate nanoactivity, we get a +4 bonus to starting nano units, which as mentioned is half our total nano units, so 26 out of 52. And a moderate area also has a nano unit recovery rate of +2, which we double due to our nanotech attunement feat, meaning that we regain 4 nano units per 10 minutes while in an area of moderate nanoactivity. And before I go any further, I do feel the need to tear into this one a little bit, because the initial and maximum nano units and recovery rate are a little confusing. Just based on the rules as written, it seems like as soon as you make friends with some nanomachines, you get that initial value, and then immediately start recovering up to that maximum value, which at an absolute maximum takes 7 hours, assuming you're not spending any. And it seems really weird that the base calculation for nano units is based around this value that is only relevant once during the first few hours of obtaining nano units. And also, does the area bonus mean that whenever we go to an area of higher or lower nanosaturation, it changes our maximum nano units? Especially considering that you need to make a check to even identify the level of nanoactivity? Shouldn't we just know because of our connection to the nanites? Also, any extra nanites above maximum bleed off into the environment at a rate of 5 per round. In what situation do you have that many excess nano units? And for that matter, do we gain additional nano units when we level up, because that original calculation is based on half our level? And the answer to all of these questions is, see all my previous comments about the publisher of this book and their attitude towards including necessary information relevant to basic gameplay. But now that we've covered the easy part of nanotech, yeah, that was the easy part, let's actually get into using it. Using nanomachines has 2-ish steps. First, we need to activate the nanites, making a DC 15 concentration check, with a +2 bonus for each 5 ranks in Craft Nanotech, and Success, which activates a cloud of nanites within 10 feet. Then we need to make a nanotech control roll, which is 1d20 plus base attack bonus plus wisdom modifier, +5 for the nanotech attunement feat, so +7 overall, and the target is dependent on the scope, power, and type of the desired effect. While examples are provided, nanotech is very much presented as a build-your-own-effect type system. So, for example, let's say we wanted the nanites to scout out the area and beam a map directly into our minds. The scope would be internal, since it only affects our mind. The power would be minor, since we just want to do a simple thing for one round, and the type would be perception, as we are trying to perceive something. So all of that would result in a total DC of 5 and a cost of 4 nano units. And Success, which lets us check out the area for a few seconds. And if you are wondering what kind of actions these are, because that is very important in the D20 system, me too. And just for funsies, let's say that our use of the nanomachines was so impressive that we have been awarded 6,000 experience points, which coincidentally is just enough to reach level 4. So we can take any of these 6 base classes, as we did with our first 3 levels, or possibly one of the advanced classes. The core book does provide 6 advanced classes: Cybercologist, Leader, Nanosmith, Prophet, Survivor, and War Chief. And because they are new classes, they also get to include all of the information in this book. And the only one of those we meet the requirements for is Nanosmith, because as mentioned earlier, you need to plan out your entire character from level 1, and that's what I did. So let's go with that, gaining 1d6 plus 2 hit points, +1 to fortitude saves, +2 to will saves, and +1 to reputation. We also gain the Nanotech Intuition ability, which allows us to add our Nanosmith level to Nanotech Concentration and Control rolls. Then 5 plus Intelligence modifier skill points, and of course a 3rd class skill list, so let's spend those. And as a level 4 character overall, our half level is now 2, increasing the benefits of our tech familiarity ability to +4. We also get to add 1 to one of our ability scores, and let's just put that in dexterity to get rid of that pesky penalty, increasing our ranged attack bonus, defenses, and reflex save by 1. And that was a Gamma World 6th edition character, the 6thest edition of Gamma World. And even by the very low standards of a D20 Modern product, it's not great. D20 Modern is a cumbersome, overcomplicated game with lots of little bits and bobs, terms, and types that need to be understood to be able to actually apply the rules. It is a system that tends to assume everything is spelled out and applied as written, which is not great in the best of circumstances, but even worse when it's being done by a company that apparently just didn't believe in proofreading. So you have this massive amount of information that you need to understand, and a book where lots of things are explained poorly, or just not at all. It is basically the worst elements of Wizards of the Coast's design, combined with the worst elements of White Wolf's production. And honestly, it is a little unfortunate that 3rd edition is so bad and unplayable that it has a death grip on the title of Worst Gamma World Edition, because this is a distant second. Like, admittedly, I am biased against bad games, so it's hard to be objective here, but just like core D20 Modern, this feels like using an unnecessarily heavy set of rules for an intentionally underpowered experience. Like, even starting at 3rd level, starting characters still feel boring compared to even a 1st level D&D character, but require significantly more work. It is a system you have to invest a lot into to get very little out of. Like, some games are notably bad, but this one, like D20 Modern itself, is just forgettably bad. Any value you might find is so deeply buried beneath a dull, monotonous experience that by the time you find it, you've already stopped caring. However, speaking of D&D, I did mention that this book uses D20 Modern or D&D 3.5, and it does. At the end of the book, they provide Enforcer, Esper, Examiner, and Scout classes. Yeah, just like 4th edition, that are actually like real classes and provide abilities and stuff that might be fun, versus the intentionally underpowered must-fit every possible genre D20 Modern base classes. Like, I am extremely critical of the concept of D&D for everything, be it as a Wizard of the Coast marketing scheme or the sole personality trait of some jackass on Twitter, but D&D does work for some things, and Gamma World is one of them. Like, going back to Metamorphosis Alpha, this is a property that exists because Jim Ward told Gary Gygax that he should make a sci-fi version of D&D, and Gygax just told him to make it himself. Gamma World has always been a game focused around combat and exploration into ancient ruins. It is a wacky post-apocalyptic Dungeons & Dragons. So having more distinct, more useful Dungeons & Dragons style classes works significantly better for Gamma World than D20 Modern, which was specifically designed in an attempt to force the D20 system into genres that it did not work for. Of course, there is always the possibility that White Wolf wanted to just make a new D20 system Gamma World, and making it a D20 Modern campaign setting was just the only way they could get the license, but intention has no real bearing on the quality of the final product. So that's it for Gamma World 6th edition. But make sure to join me next time when I'll be looking at the final edition of Gamma World, 7th edition. And boy howdy, is there a lot to say about that one. And thank you for watching. If you want more of my special brand of wit and insight, you can follow me on Blue Sky, Twitter, even Tumblr. Especially Tumblr. There are links in the description. And extra special thanks to my Fight and Flail Snails, Broken Unicorn, D-Stex, Hasterfan, Randy Mulholland, Renee D, Sean Betts, Stephen Kramer, and Toshiro Kuro. If you'd like to be cool like them, check out my Patreon. Also, channel memberships are now a thing, so you can check those out too. But if you don't want to do that, that's cool too. You can still hit all the lovely buttons, like, subscribe, these other videos that the dark, unseen hand of the YouTube algorithm has lovingly selected for you, which I am sure are lovely videos that you will also enjoy. And I will see you next time.